becoming more of a integral part of the university's future. And so what we try to do in social media is really just connect all of those distance students with the university, and that's something that Colin obviously has done very well from OSU's main social media accounts, but we have separate eCampus accounts that try to do the same thing. If people come, join our accounts and follow us, try to just give them a sense of community there as well. And the news gathering aspect and news analysis component is something that we haven't had as much use of in terms of Hootsuite's capabilities, just because the news isn't as there just isn't always a lot being written about eCampus, but still it's really proven to be pretty beneficial, and trying to still just getting used to it. And I think for me what's worked well is just having the central location to communicate with those students who reach out to us, whether they're prospective students or current students with questions. Just doing it all from the dashboard has been really beneficial. And so as the contract continues, I think I'd like to just really keep using it more and more.
Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned there's over like 19,000 students that took at least one course. In terms of growth year over year, has it been quite significant for more students going online?
Yeah, so a few years ago we thought it would probably plateau at some point. I think in 2012 our director had said, yeah, it's probably going to plateau here, but it really continues to grow about 15% from year to year in terms of on-campus students who are just taking a class or two here and there online, as well as just true distance students. We see growth in both areas, and so I think seems like it's not going away, it's not slowing down, which is pretty great for the university and for us in particular, and for the students too, of course.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting. Perfect, thank you. Actually, I deal with a couple universities that are purely online based. One of them being more of a military college, but maybe if you're interested, I would love to sync you guys up and share how they really engage with current prospective alumni, students, and keep those relationships going in the
that would be great. World. Yeah, I would really appreciate that. That'd be great.
All right. Sorry, let me just make one note here. I'm listening and typing, so there's a couple things going all at once here. So obviously, I've been noticing you guys had the great commencement. Now, are summers typically a slow period of time, or what would you guys be focusing on at this moment?
Right now, summers are a little bit slower. There's not as many things going on campus. Our town is a town of 50,000 people, so we lose about half its population when the students leave. Kind of an exaggeration, but not really. So naturally things are kind of dying down. We, at least on my end, we use summer to bolster things like policy, social media policy, or guidelines or best practices. We just got out of a meeting about redoing our social media website and kind of making a one-stop shop for people wanting to learn more about what we do on social here at Oregon State. So that's we kind of work on the background things a little bit more than actually trying to produce a lot of content. Now, as the school year gets closer and students begin visiting campus for their orientations, which they've begun already, and it will just ramp up here soon, but we'll have a little bit more content that goes out.
Mm-hmm. So the idea being just having a separate site where people can go to the different social accounts of different departments, athletics, this and that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that, and they can find policy, and they can find we're toying with maybe a blog where we can talk about ourselves and the successes we've had, and how can we help other communicators across campus with best practices. So there's a lot that can go into this site.
Oh, it's great. I saw your Beaver Boards campaign, which looked fantastic. And
campaigns came up huge for us. It's really the first time we've put it into action on a large scale, and it was great.
Mm-hmm. Will you be kind of running any other campaigns to engage with prospective or current students during the summer?
We haven't hashed out details, but we've talked about a little bit coming up with a campaign for students who visit for their orientations. We receive a lot of posts, just students excited to be on campus, pictures of our campus, and we want to try and find a way to aggregate that a little bit better. So something we need to talk about for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah, and certainly after some of these planning meetings, it would be great for us to sync up, and then I can show you how to implement the tools that you do have to execute on what you want to do.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, looking through the notes, I noticed kind of there's three key areas you were focused on, at least when you first jumped on with Hootsuite, which was really brand monitoring, crisis monitoring, and lead generation for prospective students. Those were pretty high overarching goals. Has any of that changed since last year or updated in any way?
I would say no, unless anyone else on the call has other ideas.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not from an eCampus perspective either, really.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Oh, so there was kind of three pillars that were written out at the beginning of, I guess when we're dealing with Jordan Mara, he kind of outlined, hey, these are the three goals that the university is focused on, and it was around brand monitoring, crisis monitoring, and lead generation for new students. So I was just wondering if anything has been edited or added to those goals, and also if there's been metrics that have been really followed.
No, I think those are still the priorities.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Now, those are they're broad goals. Were there any type of KPIs that were associated with any of these three goals?
I'm sure there were for enrollment. I don't know around, visibility, and what was the other one? I can't recall what you said.
Yeah, crisis and brand monitoring. I mean, those are pretty general things.
Mm-hmm. No, not that I'm aware of. We are undergoing a brand analysis right now with an outside consultant, and we're doing some surveying, some telephone surveys of alumni and and online surveys of Oregonians in general. And so, that will kind of set some new guidelines moving forward in this refresh branding exercise for what we're looking for, and how we want to move the needle. But we're still in the process of doing that.
I see. And when will that be wrapping up approximately?
In the fall.
In the fall?
We hope. Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned kind of earlier on you've had a pretty good experience with the product so far. What kind of other feedback do you have about your experience? Maybe this is not just focused on product itself, but your interactions with your previous CSM, Kathy, any of our support team. Just want to get your feedback on those things.
So this is Michelle. I think the one big piece of feedback and maybe the block for me personally is part of my challenge in using Hootsuite was primarily to focus on insights and how could we use all of this information we're getting about ourselves in ways that produce some meaningful reports. And that learning curve has been steep and much more time consuming than I anticipated. So I would say we're not where we want to be in terms of actually using all of this data and information we're getting from insights, because it is a steep learning curve and it takes more time than I would have anticipated.
I see. And Michelle, do you feel like, because I'd love to certainly tackle something like this with yourself and anyone else who has access to that tool, and what I'm thinking might be a good idea is to sit down for maybe an hour, I could always see which reports you are pulling up, maybe do a refresher and at least share how other universities are using these type of metrics, and follow.
I would love to see some of that, because I worked on trying to build some different reports, but there was some frustration initially because we weren't getting results that we thought we were going to get. And then Kathy and I kind of talked through some of them, and there were some changes on your guys' end in terms of how things were brought in. And then, frankly, I got busy and it sort of fell off my radar for a while, so we never quite got back to how can we produce something that's really good and useful to the folks here on campus. So the summer is a perfect time to revisit that.
Mm-hmm.
And examples would really help me a lot, because it is sort of, I would pull different stats and I'd be like, okay, this looks kind of cool, but I don't know if it really says anything to the people who don't understand this system. So.
Okay. Absolutely. We'll in my follow-up email, I'll be kind of summarizing this and setting out what some of our next calls will look like. And certainly I'd love to jump in on that. And speaking of metrics, are any of these metrics that you're currently collecting, are they brought up to kind of executive team? Are they interested in what's happening on social?
I think Colin could probably speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Colin just put out a report of how we used social for commencement and the different campaigns and activities that were happening on social during commencement, and that was very helpful to see that. It went to our vice president, who sits on the president's cabinet. I'm not sure how widely he shares that, but it's certainly a validation for the added investment in social, both through Hootsuite and Colin's position becoming full-time, as well as, it's great to have this as proof points for when folks may inquire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that when we found the mammoth bones and just that big number of, was it millions of impressions on the story. That was something that became a really powerful tool as we told the story of the mammoth find, across campus and through all of our different marketing materials. So. Right,
and we used it in everything from the numbers and where things were hitting, in everything from presidential speeches to interviews with the press to, social media posts. Michelle, I'm not sure, what else you used. You and Colin may have used it for.
I passed it along to some of the colleges and.
Yeah, and insights. I don't know. I've used it. It's more of like, okay, this is going to be a busy time for social, or this event just happened, whether it's good or bad, and put in a few keywords and let it go. And it's just been helpful to monitor potential crisis or PR issues that come up, and decide, give us a good gauge of, okay, this has gotten over this certain amount of mentions or whatnot, we should act on this, or maybe we shouldn't because it actually isn't as popular as we think it is. So it, just as a behind the scenes monitoring tool, it's been really helpful for us.
Gotcha. And some of the executive team and president, are they quite bought into or understand social, and also do they use social media channels themselves?
No. We've gone round and round on that. As a communications team, Colin's been involved in those conversations, and this is not something that would be a natural activity for our president.
Right.
And we, kind of came down to the point of, what's the point of having an executive do social media if it's not authentic, which is something we pride ourselves greatly on. I worked for a corporation before, and we would write tweets and things on behalf of executives in the corporation, and we just have a completely different model and approach here. So it isn't something that, they're interested in it, they're aware of it from my perspective, but it isn't something that would be a natural activity for our current president.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I can only think of one dean off the top of my head that actually has a social account. So it's not something that's prevalent even in the next level of executives, as far as I can recall.
Right. Who is that, Michelle?
Mitzi, the business dean.
Right.
Angela Batista is also pretty active from a diversity standpoint. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see right in our backyard in the University of British Columbia here, one of our clients, you probably heard Dr. Santa Ono coming in as new
Yeah.
president.
Mhm.
And we're really excited about that because we already connected with him, and our CEO Ryan's gonna grab lunch with him as well. And I'm excited to learn from him as to, obviously his approach. He's a wide user of social media. And I hope more and more universities will start following his suit because it's such a powerful voice to have. And people will really listen to, what a president of a school says. It's just that extra marketing tool that you have. So, anyways, interesting conversation. Thanks so much for sharing that as well. Was there any other feedback that you had? Any concerns? Some of the things you might want us to tackle, especially in our next calls.
I think from my perspective, helping on the news side with Michelle to get some ideas for how to harness the power of Hootsuite for news media monitoring, I think would be very helpful. I know Colin is well down the track of that, and I'm not sure, Tyler, how that's working for you, but I know on the news side it would be very helpful to have some guidance and counsel and direction from Hootsuite on that. I don't know, Michelle, if you want to add to that.
No, I would agree, and I think you mentioned examples. Being able to see what some other folks are doing would be good because I sort of have a vision in my head, but I haven't quite been able to make it happen in Hootsuite based on my limited time and skill. So I'm open to suggestions and ideas or examples of here's some reports that we think are useful or how people are using the insights for media monitoring would be good.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Perfect. I'm also thinking what might be a good idea and is also we have a new product roadmap that's coming out within the next couple of weeks. Just talking about some of the updates, and there's some exciting things coming around to analytics updates, to customer using social for customer service updates, and by the way, are you currently engaging quite a bit with students for more of a customer service approach on social?
Who's that addressed to?
Joe? Yeah. I'm not really sure who'd be in charge of something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Colin, what do you mean by customer service approach exactly? Peter, what do you mean by that? Because I think Colin is very customer service focused in his interaction on the different platforms, and that he's very, we have a track record of being very responsive and transparent on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not sure what you mean by customer service.
Yeah, I think I phrased it inappropriately there. What I meant is a lot of universities are now using social and have actually separate social channels for students to basically inquire about anything from, courses, admission, athletics, whatever it may be. I'm wondering if you currently take that type of approach, or do you just engage with students through the regular channels?
We engage.
Well, I think we take that kind of approach reactively.
Yeah.
Colin, what did you say? I mean, that's my assessment, is that if a question comes up about something like last week, there was an issue with our email system. Mm-hmm. And there was an issue with some of the IT systems that students needed at the end of the spring term. Colin was all over that, answering questions, working very closely with our IT people to get answers out there to students' questions, very proactively on that. But it was in reaction to something that had happened. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you get the distinction I'm making?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So we're not proactively saying, I mean, if we know about something before, like, you're not going to be able to check your final grades because, the banner system's down or something like that, will say that. But part of the way we may have found out from it, I don't know, Colin, how it exactly happened, if John Dolan contacted you first or if you started seeing things on social.
Yeah, not that time, but that has happened before with outages across campus, and we've alerted them of the problem. So it works both ways. I think as far as we work a lot together with communicators across campus. So if there's a question about athletics, even though we don't control the athletics accounts, we work very tightly with them to bring them into the conversation, whether it's tagging them or in a tweet or sending off an email to let them know that they need to answer something. So the customer service side, we try to, like Andy said, we try to be as responsive as possible and as quickly as possible.
I understand. Gotcha. Yeah, and the reason I ask is some universities have started putting their, I guess, some of the phone support that they have, email support, they're also giving them access to social so they can answer those questions directly without taking up the time of some of the marketers and other contributors to social media. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if we'd ever hand over our accounts to other people.
Oh, fair enough. They're certainly putting them on limited permissions for those kind of things.
Yeah, I could see it being useful, especially within Hootsuite. But
and by the way, do you have maybe monthly or quarterly like communicator meetings across campus?
We have them, I'd say, probably quarterly. We do.
Quarterly. And I'm guessing.
And then I meet with an informal social media group invite all communicators who are involved in social media once a month just to talk about trends and cross-promote and things like that.
Cool. I always like to offer kind of services of coming in and talking about, trends in higher ed, trends in social media in general. Maybe it's a specific topic. If you need kind of a guest speaker to come in, I would be more than happy to kind of provide that kind of insight. So I'll certainly offer that to you if you ever need that kind of info.
Hey, one of the things we are looking at, I mean, we're coming up on a year, right? Almost this summer, I believe.
September.
Okay. In the next few months, we're coming up on a year. I mean, we are looking for ways to increase the use of Hootsuite across campus and evangelize it and have more folks come on board. We would like to do that to get to our goal of a connected campus. But a lot of it, quite honestly, this year we've been in startup mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I can speak to that a little bit. I actually made a bigger push to make, to get more people on Hootsuite and get them licenses. But, when we did the demos and I talked to them, the pricing is just way out of range especially for some of the smaller departments. And they just are not seeing the value to the price. And I know I talked with, it was either Jordan or maybe Marcus about prorating some of the yearly licenses, and if we get 20 or more people to sign on, and it's only $2,000 per license. And to a lot of these people, I mean, we're a public institution. We're not Princeton. We don't have private money, and so that's a lot of money for a lot of these departments. And that's really the biggest hang-up, because every time we show the product, they love it. When I go to meetings and I show it, they ask what it is, how can they get it, and then I tell them the price, and it kind of just stalls right there.
Is that because that it would be coming out of their budgets?
That's correct.
Yes, definitely. It would be coming out of their budget.
That's correct.
And how many departments currently are on Hootsuite? Like, which departments would that be?
It's just those you have on the phone that I'm aware of. I know athletics it's university relations and marketing, which is me, Colin, and Michelle. We're all part of that group. And then Tyler with eCampus, they were one of the early adopters. And then athletics had, what was that version called, Colin?
Yeah, I think they have enterprise only through the Pac-12 and the licenses that they get through the Pac-12.
I see.
Right, through our athletic conference. So they were very interested in this until we got down to, okay, who can step up to the plate and pay for their number of licenses, you know?
And how many departments, if this was a perfect world, how many departments were you looking to link up?
I mean, I'd want to get all, 11 colleges, the graduate school, the alumni association, athletics, the foundation, our auxiliary groups like the alumni association, the Oregon State University Foundation, so I'd say 15.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
15 departments.
And many of them, not many, I mean, a few of the colleges and then smaller departments, they've actually just have gone with Hootsuite Pro, and they pay the $10 or $15 a month and are just fine with that. And it essentially gives them enterprise capabilities with, they're not connected in what we're connected with. We're not connected together, but, they just use Hootsuite on the monthly $10 a month basis, and they're fine with that.
Right. Well, this is something that I'll have a look back and see what the conversations were before. I mean, ideally, I think we have a lot of good cases of what a connected campus looks like and the advantages there, but budget, I completely understand it being in Marcus's and Jordan's role before. And so I'll have a chat with them, see what those opportunities look like. Whether it's a slow adoption or, I mean, obviously the more users there are, the lower the costs go. That's just a conversation I'll have to have with Marcus first. And maybe we'll be...
Right. And I'd be curious, Tyler, from your perspective, I mean, how's it working for you for eCampus? I mean, as being one of the kind of partner units on campus that stepped up very early and, got in on the ground floor of this, are you finding it helpful?
I am finding it helpful. I think I can do more. I would like to do more with it. Social media is really just like maybe a quarter of my job, if maybe a little bit less in terms of daily roles. So I think there can just be more can be done to really use it to its potential. And I think I've been in startup mode. I like the way that was phrased, just because it's been learning and then trying to just use it for what it can do. And so I'm excited for what the next year and a few months will bring, just to get more familiar with it and actually get into it a little more deeply. And but yeah, I think it's gone well for us, and I think there are some changes happening within for eCampus, and I think there's still some growth happening. So hopefully, and I've been pushing for this a little bit, just to have more of a role on social media. If not me, then perhaps someone else who can just devote more of eCampus's time to engaging with current students or prospective students. That's been my primary use for the dashboard, is just answering questions. And Colin has gotten some, or at least one pretty recently, a question about from an eCampus student, and let me know about that. And then we get quite a few on Facebook, questions on Facebook and mentions on Twitter with questions. And so I think it's been very helpful that for me and our enrollment services team to actually answer questions through the dashboard instead of having to log into each individual account. So yeah, I think there's just a lot more potential than what I've been able to do with it so far. So I think it's been worthwhile for sure from an eCampus perspective.
Well, that's good to hear. It's just a matter of, like you said, learning. I think, Peter, that's kind of one of the messages. Colin, for sure, our social media editor for the university, is by far and away maximizing, I feel, and harnessing the power of Hootsuite. We could use some assist from you. Sounds like for Tyler as well, on how to maximize it better. And I know for us here in the news organization, Michelle has shared that.
Okay. And what I will do is, I think it makes sense to kind of break out into kind of smaller calls here. So with individual people, obviously Tyler, for example, I'd love to have an individual call with you and share kind of what can be done. can have a look at what you're currently doing on your dashboard. So what I'm thinking, what the summer will look like, is I'd love to have kind of a first call, talking, maybe focusing around insights. What kind of metrics are important, how they can be interpreted and used. That would probably be kind of the first call. And then I'd like to have subsequent calls with individuals about how they're utilizing their dashboard specifically. So what I'm going to do is I'll summarize what we've talked about here. It'll be a bit of a lengthy email, and then we can all kind of, I guess, look at schedules and see what the next month will look like, and set up individual calls, and also maybe a joint call for some of this training. So that's kind of my idea right now. How does that sound to everybody?
Yeah, sounds
fine.
great.
Yeah. Okay.
That sounds good. I particularly like to be involved in the call around the news with Michelle, just so I can understand what's happening there. This is Annie. I know Colin's on his way. So.
All right. Well, that is kind of all I want to cover today. Were there any other things that were top of mind for anyone?
No, I appreciate your checking in and letting us know about this change and seeing where we're at.
Mm-hmm. And I'd love to, and I'll propose kind of a monthly sync up. This is what I do pretty much with every university, and typically a week or a couple days before the call, I would just kind of email you guys, kind of say, okay, these are some things you want to cover, if there's anything you want to add to the agenda, and whether it makes sense to have the call or not, it's going to be obviously up to you guys. But just having something in the calendar is always beneficial. So if it's okay with you, I'll just propose maybe a couple times for a monthly sync up as well.
Okay.
Cool.
Sounds great.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for all jumping on this call. This was a lot of attendees, and expect an email from me by probably tomorrow morning. There's a few things I need to follow up on here.
Sure.
Thanks a lot, Peter.
Thank you very much. Back in your new role.
Pleasure to meet everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.